So Bitcoin has broken $100,000 ahead of a lot of people's schedules. And even though it's pulled back, at least at the time I'm recording this, I think it's going to change the landscape going into this bull market. And I do think we have a lot of bull market ahead of us. HBAR has also repriced, but it is just the tip of the iceberg for what's going on in the Hedera ecosystem. And I can't wait to jump into it. Welcome back. I'm Brandon, the HBAR Bull, here once again to bring you the latest in the Hedera ecosystem. But as always, none of this is financial advice. Use it for entertainment or educational purposes only. So I am going to get into that repricing here to kick it off. So the repricing of an asset is either a rapid increase or decrease in the price to kind of a new benchmark. And that's what we've seen with HBAR. It's jumped significantly over the past several weeks. Now, I think the catalyst for this repricing has been the U.S. election and the fact that we're probably going to see better regulations and legislations around crypto here in the United States, which of course will permeate through the rest of the world. There's been an awful big focus on utility tokens. Some people call them DINO tokens, and I like the fact that the Hedera community has embraced that. Now, in addition to that utility narrative, there's also been a narrative around US-based tokens. And the reason for that is there's been a lot of grumblings coming out of the Trump administration on how US-based tokens might be treated more favorably. And HBAR is in the best position for that. Technically, the Hedera Governing Council is a Delaware-based LLC. And, we have the founding team down there in Dallas with Swirls and Hashgraph. So we're set up really well for that. But there has been an awful lot of flow of capital into these utility tokens in general. And the reason why I think that's happening is the past few years we've had very little regulatory clarity. I'm not going to get into all that, but there has been an attack on a lot of different tokens, and they're usually tokens with some kind of a use. That also means there's very few tokens that have been in the clear. Bitcoin is one of the ones that has absolutely been in the clear. Ethereum a little bit later on was put more into that box as well. But also meme coins, because they have absolutely no use at all. So I think a lot of capital flowed into those meme coins. But utility tokens like XRP and HBAR and a lot of the other ones that are floating around out there, they have been under this cloud, right? Now, there has been some judicial decisions that have allowed XRP to lift that cloud a little bit, but I think after these past elections, people have felt just much more comfortable putting money into these utility coins, and I think that's why we're seeing a lot of capital flow into it. But still, HBAR has outperformed most of those other tokens. And I think the reason for that is people buy a token first, and then they look for reasons why they bought it. They buy it because the price is going up, and then they do their research. It seems a little bit backwards, but that is how a lot of people do it. And once they do that dive into Hedera, they find all the rabbit holes that we talk about here week in and week out. And I think that's why HBAR's outperformed. The other thing that I want to touch on is this move has been on high volume. So there's been a lot of trading activity of the HBAR. Just to put this into perspective, the recent high for trading volume on HBAR was $7.4 billion. Now, this compares to what we saw as an average during the bear market of daily volume in the $20 to $60 million range. So it's absolutely gone exponential, and it's held that volume well above $1 billion for several days now. But it's not just impressive compared to the most recent bear market, but even the last bull market where we did see HBAR up around these prices. Centralized exchanges also pay an awful lot of attention because, of course, that's what their fees are based off of. Now, there's still a few big centralized exchanges that don't list HBAR, and I want to see those listings as soon as possible. Those include Gemini and Kraken. One of the biggest supporters of this move has come out of Asia, specifically Korea. Now, as is going to be discussed when we hit on Canary Capital a little bit later, Korea is huge for the crypto market. Now, as we would expect, the biggest exchange for HBAR trading volume is Binance, but I would really expect Coinbase to be number 2, but it's not. The next exchange in the number 2 position is Upbit, and that's HBAR and the Korean won. Upbit is a Korean exchange. And we're just seeing activity in the HBAR market take off. Here we have another chart showing that Hashback is seeing record-breaking usage as well. Now, I wanted to get into a lot more metrics with DeFi Corner, but Brady was really busy. They're gearing up to allow borrowing on Bonzo Finance. Hopefully that's going to be put in place by next Monday, but he had a few issues he had to address. So we're not going to have DeFi Corner right now, but I might do a special one here coming up on Sunday. If not, we're definitely going to catch Brady next week. The other thing that I wanted to touch on, we're going to move on here. I'll get into the price of the HBAR a little bit later, but we have a new platform that's launching that I'm really looking forward to, and it's a meme coin launchpad. Now, normally meme coins are not my thing, but can bring an awful lot of attention to an ecosystem, and I know Zepsy is really excited about it. I've been messing around with the beta version on testnet, and I've spun up a couple meme coins. It's working just fine. I have had a little trouble on the mobile version versus the laptop version, but I'm sure they're going to have all bugs worked out here before too long. And I am getting word from that team that we could see a launch here on mainnet a lot sooner than we think. Now, before we jump off meme coins, the Mouth is doing their regular loudspeaker competition where they are focused on one of the tokens that's going to launch on MemeJob.Fun, and that's the DINO coin. It's probably the most anticipated meme coin that I've seen in a really long time. Their mascot is Roy, and they're asking for memes around this, and there's going to be the potential to give out some of this DINO coin for the winners of this competition. Now, I did participate in this one. I couldn't pass up the possibility of getting a hold of some of this meme coin early. Great to see the Mouth continuing with these topical competitions. They have these on a weekly basis, and they have some really impressive prizes, so you might as well figure out how to participate in it now so you can collect some of those prizes here going into the future. So let's move from the fun stuff over to some more serious stuff. We had Canary Capital going on Crypto Prime to describe and explain why they chose HBAR for their initial trust product and why they chose HBAR for their first ETF filing. So let's check it out.
Well, here's the thing, when we were at Valkyrie, the obvious, we looked at the things that were obvious, right? The things that were, marketable, things like Bitcoin and Ethereum and even a couple of others that were broad market everybody was looking at. And when I took a break before starting Canary, I actually traveled to Tokyo and Korea, part of my old stomping ground from the TradFi world, to see what was happening in crypto over there. Because I don't know if you saw this, Nate, but when it comes to trading pairs, you usually think that, okay, the US dollar is the dominant trading pair for Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. But for several points in time, the Korean won is the dominant trading pair. And it actually took over as the dominant trading pair in Q4 of 2023, Q1 of 2024. And I said, look, I've got to get over there on the ground, see what's going on, see what they're looking at. And I already had it in the back of my mind that HBAR was quite interesting because it had real enterprise applications. We've already established that Bitcoin is the king cryptocurrency. But what about enterprise applications, which is really the next step here? And not only was I looking at it from that perspective, big industrial uses, enterprise uses, it's a little bit different than your typical blockchain. But when I was in Korea, I realized that it was a top 5 traded token. And there was also a lot going on there. And by the way, that's also how I got to focus on XRP, because it's another one that's huge in Japan, huge in Korea. And they usually lead the way in technology, those two countries. I mean, that was something I learned from my days in video games, right? Those two countries led the way in video games. They had a version of the iPhone 5 years before we had the iPhone. They were using it for consumer purposes when we were still on commercial over here back in 2007. So that's really what stuck with me was, okay, HBAR, nobody else is looking at it. I've got an opportunity to be first if we do something there. So let's go out and lead with one of the leading enterprise blockchains that I don't feel like anybody else is paying attention to.
But you do currently have a filing for an HBAR ETF. You're the only one out there who has that filing as we sit here today. Is that an uplisting of the private trust, or would this be a new offering altogether?
Yeah, I mean, we're contemplating a dual path solution. Grayscale brilliantly listed a lot of trust, OTC, and then converted them to national exchanges. And our idea is, potentially if we can either, try to go the approval route with a straight ETF, or start with a trust, and if we can't get approved that route, then we can uplist a trust, and so that's really the way that we were thinking about it.
So there we have some more reasons why HBAR might be gaining some attention and why it might gain some more attention going into the future. The next thing we're going to touch on is real-world asset tokenization. One of the first teams that focused on real assets in the Hedera space was Toko. A few months ago, they rebranded to Scintilla, and they have been doing a lot of stuff in the background recently. But I caught up with Tim Popplewell. He is the CEO over there, to tell us about how it's going to move from doing things in the background to actually things hitting the market in the year to come. Tim, thanks for hopping on. How have you been?
No worries. I've been really good. Thanks. How are you?
Busy. Things are getting really busy here in our space.
That is a great way of saying it. I mean, it is certainly busy. Yeah, I think what's happened in the last few weeks has just made this industry completely red hot, and we're definitely feeling some of that, which is great after a couple of years of what has really been quite difficult times. To suddenly be in the spotlight for all the right reasons is just fantastic.
Well, I think one of the things is Hedera did the right thing in that we built a lot during this downturn in the market, and now we're primed and ready to move forward. Now, you've been focusing completely on the real world asset tokenization space. To start here, Tim, let's start with a wide lens. How's the broad real world asset tokenization landscape looking at this point?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I've been thinking about this the last couple of days, and there's various ways you could answer this. But I think if you step right back, the obvious answer is it's going from lots of people thinking about it to lots of people talking about it to lots of people doing it. And I think we're now in the doing phase, which is where we want to play. And that's been an element of frustration for the last probably year and a bit, where we've been talking, but actually there's not much really happening. There's a lot happening now, and I think for me that's the best way of putting it. And then anecdotally, we were at Future Blockchain Summit here in Dubai a few weeks ago, and I was there last year, and it was the change in atmosphere is extraordinary, and that was before the US election result. The amount of people there coming to do, not just to talk, and the amount of action we've had since then has been just extraordinary, and long may it continue. Then there's Abu Dhabi FinTech Week and Bitcoin MENA next week, and the level of excitement before these events even take place is just extraordinary. I've not seen anything like it in this space. So a lot of buzz, an awful lot of people wanting to actually do things. It's actually a bank holiday here today. It's a national day here in the UAE. And yet our team was sat around a coffee table this morning, thrashing out just how are we going to actually address all the opportunities we've got at the moment? How are we going to make them come to fruition? You
only have so many hours in the day, right?
So many hours, so many people, and frankly, so much money. So it's a tricky balance, particularly when there are so many great opportunities here. I mean, I was writing down just before we came on air just the key announcements that we're likely to have out in the next 6 or so weeks, just on real world assets, and they cover almost a mind-boggling set of potential products. So there's from financial products like bonds. There is obviously real estate, who we're talking to people, and not just people in the Middle East, people who want to use us and Hedera to build real estate assets and real estate plays in other parts of the world as well. Precious metals and stones, which is massive here, and then a whole bunch of sustainability plays that have started to bubble up. And rather than, I love the sustainability plays, except for the fact that usually there's a great big gaping hole in them somewhere. What I'm finding at the moment is the ones that we're looking at are the real deal. We're starting to see ones that we're saying, okay, the problems that we've seen in the past, you've already thought about, and you're ready to go. So it's super exciting, and that's really where we see probably the next phase is we're going to see not just Scintilla, but we're going to see across the piece an enormous amount of announcements about things actually happening, rather than what we've seen probably in the last year of people saying we're working quietly on something. By the way, we've done this as well. We're working quietly on things, not allowed to say what they are. Bear with us in due course. Well, in due course is about to happen, and we think. Really, Q1 next year is going to be an absolute explosion in terms of releases and stuff getting actually done.
Well, that's what we want to hear. Now, let's talk about Hedera specifically as far as RWAs right now. I mean, we've seen real estate. They've been talking about it. We've seen commodities, as you mentioned, traditional assets like money market funds. We even have whiskey casks getting tokenized on Hedera. So there's all different directions we're going in, but fairly small scale to this point. Where do you see that going here in the future? You know, what are things looking like for the Hedera RWA space?
Yeah, I mean, Hedera have done a great job in terms of reward assets and tokenization. And I think they're perfectly placed now for what I just spoke about there in terms of what's going to happen in the next few months. It's just a fact of life, and it's just what you have to do in terms of you've got to get some of these POCs out on a small scale, because the reality is they're actually very challenging to do. And you don't really know what problems you're going to come up against until you actually do them. So we've been through, or we're going through at the moment, this phase of fairly small scale POCs, and as you rightly point out, in various different parts of the market, kind of to see a little bit what will stick. I do think we're getting to that phase now where we're beginning to see what the ones that will stick, at least imminently, are going to be, and certainly real estate is going to be one of them. And in the Hedera network, the Red Swan guys are absolutely exceptional. And I think that you're going to see some stuff there, is my guess from what last time we spoke with those guys. So real estate's going to be a big one. I certainly think there's a whole bunch of financial products that are bubbling under, that are, whereas you probably have been looking at money market funds, which are in a way a little bit of a POC and a little bit of a let's suck it and see. We're going to start getting into some of the bond products that are actually quite interesting and exciting, and funding some projects that can't get funded or finding it more difficult to get funded now in some slightly more esoteric markets and opportunities. And I think that's really exciting. And then I think thirdly, and again, the Guardian obvious vanguard of this is sustainability plays, which we're working more and more with various kind of, as I said, kind of cool sustainability plays that now look like they've actually dealt with some of the big issues that we've been dealing with for the last couple of years.
And the infrastructure that's been put in place around the Guardian and even some of the real world asset tokenization studio, things along those lines, they've put a lot of these things in place. So when we do get to this point when a lot of these big entities are ready to jump in, we have everything in place and ready for them.
It's ready. Yeah. It's ready. Yeah.
All right.
And as I said right at the start, I think that moment is nearly upon us.
Good. Again, that's exactly what we want to hear. So Scintilla's obviously been really busy as well. I saw that Scintilla launched their new site, your new site. Can you give us an update on how things are going for Scintilla in this general environment that we're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, in a way, it's a microcosm of everything I've just said. We decided to rebrand a little while ago, as I said, and it's gone exceptionally well. We've got a whole bunch of projects in different areas, and as I mentioned earlier, it's more a matter of what we choose to focus on now, because we can't focus on everything. And I've probably given some hints just there as to where we are focusing. So it's been going incredible. Part of the reason I wasn't at the Hedera Council meeting in Miami a couple of weeks ago was that I just couldn't spare the time. It was so busy here in the Middle East. And if you think about what we're licensed in the UAE, in Dubai, via VARA. VARA have taken a global lead on regulation in this space. And so it stands to reason, particularly since the election, that things have really massively hotted up here as real serious players start to talk about, how do we get this done and who do we get it done with? And just as Hedera have been building and have been getting things ready for when this moment occurs, obviously so have we. And so we see now as our big moment to now come to the party and start to announce some really big, interesting projects and interesting opportunities. And I think what we'll see is it's National Day here. And after National Day, it tends to power down for Christmas. And schools finish in a couple of weeks, and it all seems to power down. But then from about the 4th of January, it goes absolutely gangbusters here, and that's what we're looking at. Early part of January through Q1, what we think you'll see generally in the market, and specifically from Scintilla, are a whole bunch of announcements of some big projects that we're working on and things that we've been doing for a while and are now coming to market.
And it seems like you guys are making some great strides. So the next thing that I want to get into is the first step is to tokenize these assets. And that's the phase we're in right now, actually tokenizing them. The next phase is integrating it into the traditional markets out there, the large exchanges. We have the Texas Stock Exchange that's going to be coming out, the NYSE, we have COMEX, all these huge exchanges. They're looking at this stuff because of the efficiencies that can be gained in settlement and, actually having these being bearer assets and being able to be used in different ways. When do you think we start to see that these large exchanges start to use this new technology in new ways?
Yeah, I mean, the truth of the matter is they're already dipping their toe in, as you say, and it's the big question. I mean, I think it's a little bit further down the line, to be honest, and I think the issue of liquidity is far from being solved at this point. But the good news is that everyone's looking at it. We ourselves, we have an exchange license here as well in Dubai, so we're obviously very, very much looking at how we utilize our exchange license and who we partner with to do that, because we don't intend building our own. Obviously, I think that would just be for us to be silly enough to think we can take on those large exchanges that you just mentioned. There would be the height of folly. So yeah, you can imagine that's that's a lot of the meetings that we're having at the moment, is how exactly we bring that to market and who we partner with. But the good news is everyone's looking at it. I think what's happened in the last few weeks has speeded that up significantly. But it is a tricky challenge, and I do think it's going to take some time and some people who are a great deal smarter than I am to come up with solutions as to exactly how we get liquidity into some of these, as I say, more esoteric products and projects.
So do you think that entities like Scintilla will come up with small exchanges as a proof of concept, and those will get acquired? Or do you think they'll just kind of get copied by the bigger guys, but then you've already created the assets that are ready to go on to those larger exchanges anyway?
Yeah, the reality is we don't know. I mean, obviously, ultimately, it would be lovely if somebody came along and acquired us for a whole bunch of cash, but we're not banking on it. It is a POC type environment, particularly in the exchange world. And it is a little bit because we at this stage, we almost need to marry buyer and seller together to some degree, at least, to ensure that we've got some element of liquidity. I mean, we certainly hear stories of people who are talking about, $500 million liquidity pools and so on. And we think that is way, way down the line. I could be wrong, and I actually hope I am. But it doesn't seem to me like that's an imminent way this is going to go. And I think the large exchanges will do the same. As I say, they're going to dip the toes in the water. They're going to do some POCs, hopefully with the likes of ourselves and others. As I say, we are in a great position because we're VARA licensed here in the Middle East, here in UAE and Dubai. And we've got some projects ongoing for people to take a look at. So we think we're quite well positioned in that. But I'm not really thinking that the exchange situation is going to be solved, in that time frame. I think that will be further down the line. Yeah.
Well, it can't come soon enough for me, but I know we have to do it in the right way as well to make sure we don't have any major snafus. Of course, there's going to be some issues along the way, but we'll get those hammered out. I think you and Scintilla are in the right place at the right time. Tim, thank you so much for hopping on today, telling us about real world assets and telling us about Scintilla.
Great stuff. Anytime. Take care.
And now we're going to stick with some real assets. We're going to talk about cars here. I've been getting a lot of questions around Crypto Auto's Hedera integration. Crypto Autos makes it easy to buy luxury vehicles with crypto, and that becomes big business, especially in these bull markets. From what I can tell, the integration essentially lets you buy their vehicles with HBAR. Simple enough, right? Now, I don't yet know if the use of the Hedera network goes further than that, but I'll be sure to dig into it in the weeks to come. So now we're going to get into Hedera and crypto being used as a force for good. This one involves St. Jude's, Christie's, and Twigital, my company. Twigital allows you to take almost any physical object and create a 3D representation of that and then mint that into an NFT. And I caught up with Sam, who had some suggestions and wanted to enhance one of the pieces of art that we're going to talk about here in a second with Twigital. So let's take a look. All right, so we're here with Sam today. We are here doing something for St. Jude's and getting some art involved, and we're capturing it with Twigital. So Sam, just to start off, can you just tell us about this little piece of art?
So this piece was done by a boy named Caden. He lives in South Africa. He's severely autistic, and he's clearly an incredibly talented artist. He and his father donated a piece to a charity auction we were doing for St. Jude. And it was selected by Christie's to be put up for auction with all the proceeds going to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital.
All right, so when exactly is this auction going to be taking place?
It's going to take place December 4th to the 17th. It's an online auction. Anyone can bid on it. This is actually a brand new piece by Caden. So this is going to be the Bidders Edition piece. Everyone who has a winning bid at any given time or a highest bid at any given time is going to get an NFT of this piece. And the winner of the full auction is going to get this actual physical piece in addition to the NFT that he donated.
All right, so how are we getting Web3 involved here? You mentioned that there's going to be NFTs involved. We're trying to get Twigital here to get some additional NFTs for the people that win the auction. Can you tell us a little bit about the Web3 aspect of this?
So the NFT the piece that's actually up for Christie's is an NFT. So that's the Web3 piece. And Caden and his father, Nico, they use the proceeds of his NFT sales to fund education that he needs, special education that isn't available in South Africa for normal citizens. Web3 is a lifesaver for them, literally, and it allows Caden to enter the world in a way he never could otherwise. And with what Christie's has done by listing one of his pieces and what you can do by getting involved is to get more eyes on his art, his incredible talent, and hopefully help him and many others like him, because in addition to funding Caden's education, they're also incredibly charitable, and they donate to autism causes in South Africa and around the world. And obviously they're passionate about St. Jude and keeping kids healthy.
All right, so how did you get involved with this? What made you want to get interested?
Okay, so I've donated to St. Jude for years. I've obviously seen the national ads, things like that, but the last few years I've gotten even more involved. And for me, the why is simple. It's about the families. St. Jude doesn't charge anyone for any treatment. They don't charge families for hotel rooms or flights or cab fare or anything. They just care about saving children's lives. And to make it a little bit more kind of succinct, I can tell a story about a little girl named Imani. She was born in November of 2019. And by the time she was 2 months old, she had been diagnosed with a brain tumor. She had had brain surgery. Her doctors had told her parents they only got 60% of the tumor, and she was a hospice case. Her father said, I prayed, I wept, I bought my daughter's burial plot. One of her doctors got her file into the hands of a St. Jude doctor. They called Imani and Imani's family, and they said, we've seen cases like this before. They have been cured. Get on a plane to Memphis. They got on a plane to Memphis, and just this past month, Imani turned 5 years old. That's what St. Jude does every single day, and it's powerful. These families go through hell, and St. Jude offers hope. And that's what Caden's piece offers. That's what we're doing with Hope For. All of these things, it's the holiday season, it's the giving season, but this is a 365-day-a-year mission to save children's lives. So that's why I do what I do.
You can't get a better cause than that. And we're happy at Twigital to be able to help you do that a little bit. What made you want to get Twigital involved and to add a little bit to these NFTs that you're creating?
So I've been a Hedera guy for years, and we both are, obviously. I mean, it's right there in your name. And so I kind of had seen your stuff. We met, it was Consensus really, where we kind of met and showed, Brandon showed me what they were doing, and it's just incredible. It offers a whole nother layer to artwork and to digital art. I mean, taking it and really being able to get granular and turn it into a 3D model. It's an incredible platform. And I think hopefully this will be an introduction with Caden's piece to other uses in the art world. Hopefully Christie's will take notice. But yeah, I mean, you could take a Monet or a Degas and you could create a 3D representation for it. It can create opportunities for provenance by getting that level of granular detail. It's just a cool technology. And if anything I can do to help a fellow HBAR get the word out there, I'm happy to spread the word for you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a really cool experience so far. We captured it. It looks fantastic. Thanks for letting us get involved.
100%. Thank you so much. And go to Christie's.com, check out the piece, bid on it, check us out, hopeforthecure.com and at hopeforthecure on X. We're going to try to raise as much money as we can to save some of these kids.
Well, thanks again. Good luck, and get out there and put your bids in. So there's actually going to be a few pieces of art that goes along to the winner of that Christie's auction. Now, the Twigital piece is going to be one of those pieces of art. Now, that auction is going on right now, and you can find the link to that auction in the description. It's going to be going on for a couple weeks, and of course, that's going to a great cause. So it doesn't matter if it's charity, if it's real-world asset tokenization, transactional Internet of Things, micropayments. Hedera is involved in pretty much all of the really hot verticals that we have going on in the crypto space right now. And there's nothing hotter right now than AI. And we talked about several weeks ago the fact that Casper Labs changed and rebranded to Prove AI. And they moved from the Casper blockchain onto Hedera. And we have the founder of that explaining why they made that move and why Hedera.
So, Bernal, do you want to kick us off and explain, why Prove AI is using Hedera?
Yeah, there's several reasons. Instead of naming 10, I'll just name 2 or 3. So, first of all, I think there's a huge cultural match, meaning the Hedera infrastructure, and Lehman, correct me if I get any of this wrong, seems very purpose-built for safe enterprise use cases. And that goes right down to how the council is constructed, etc. Meaning there's just a lot more guarantees around permanence, around policies, and knowing that everything's going to work well. And I think it's very, very important to have cultures aligned. And then there's a lot of technical things that also make a lot of sense for us. First, since our product is primarily about audit and tracking and tracing things, instant finality, heavy time synchronization are very important to us. And if you look at a lot of DLTs out there, they can get desynced, blocks can get orphaned, and that's like a non-starter if you're using it for audit purposes. Over and above that, the smart contracting capability is completely Turing complete, which means the flexibility on how you set triggers, how you set alerts is, it's only limited by your imagination. And then finally, and there's lots more I could go into, but the fact that things like native USDC integration, stablecoins, for example, exists. The fact that, at least from a regulatory standpoint, Hedera has been incredibly judicious and conservative in how they've constructed things, hence being, welcomed by enterprises, is really, really valuable to us. Because at the end of the day, we're selling a product that is telling enterprises, hey, we're going to let you unleash your AI potential and keep you safe. You've got to have a platform that also reflects those values. And we think we found the right partnership there.
So exciting stuff. And of course, Dr. Lehman Baird, his doctorate was in AI and machine learning. So we see why he's so interested in that space. So without further delay, we need to get into Shark Bites. We had some great questions from the community this week. So let's take a look. Rob, it's a good week to be an H-Barbarian.
Well, every week's a good week to be an H-Barbarian from my perspective, but this has been a particularly good one. Yeah. Crazy times, but I think we're getting back where we belong, and that's it's always.
I
good.
think that's a big part of it. I think we're just getting back to where we actually should be. I think there's a lot of new people getting exposed to Hedera, and as they get exposed, they go down those rabbit holes that we go on a weekly basis, and they're discovering what we've known for a long, long time.
Yeah, and all that great content is built up on a week-by-week basis. You put it all out there. All the other, content providers put it out there. So there's so much, to differentiate Hedera versus any of the other layer 1s or layer 2s. That's, it's a smorgasbord of great stuff. It's just difficult to know where to start. And so, I'm welcome to all the new community members. I'm sure there are, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of people who have just been introduced to Hedera and saying, what's it all about? Well, welcome. Enjoy the ride. Hedera is the best utility chain out there. So dive right in.
It's certainly what we believe. So just to let anybody that's new know what's going on here, Rob is one of the governing council members, one of the most active H-Barbarians in general, and he takes questions from people every week, week in and week out, and we've got a pretty good lineup today, so I'm going to kick it off with HBRA, who says, might have asked this last week, so same again. Does a governing council member expiry mean the closure of their node? In the past, I believe I heard Mance or Lehman say that it's still possible to run their node. It just won't be a governing council node. Presumably, this makes it a kind of community node. Now, Rob, I'm not sure if when Mance and Lehman were referring to this, I don't really remember this in particular, but they might have been referring to once we do have community nodes, because I believe that the couple council members that have rolled off, their nodes actually have been shut down. But you might have some more insight.
Yeah, that's true. So those small handful, I think there's only 2 governing council members that have rolled off, get subsumed back into the network and get switched off for sure. So the new governing council members then take over, not the physical infrastructure, because presumably that was part of the governing council's technology stack itself, but take over that node position within the 39 for this first phase of the network and decentralization. And I don't remember either Mance and Lehman making that statement, but I suspect, like you, what they meant was once the council is full and we get to that point where we have community nodes or the next phase of decentralization, where a greater whitelist of node hosts, then absolutely the former council members can continue or will be able to continue to run nodes. I remember once we got 39, there will be an annual rotation as council members have concluded their term on the governing council. There's no reason to believe that in the future they shouldn't be able to continue to operate a node. One would expect so, once they're building applications and have embedded the technology within their technology infrastructure, they would want to continue to host a node. As ever, all of these things have already been thought through by Lehman, and I would imagine that's the case. So if and when AP Plus has built its use cases on Hedera, there's no reason to think that we wouldn't want to continue to host that node in the future when we're no longer on the governing council.
Makes perfect sense. All right, so the first one came from HBRA, and the second one is from HBRO, who asks, can you ask Rob to see if he can float the idea of Power Ledger migrating to Hedera from Ethereum for smart power grids? They're Australian-based, and Hedera's speed and cost would be perfect for their use case. Now, I think this is going to be a quick answer, Rob. What do you have for us?
Well, it can be, but I actually going to use it to talk a little bit more about what we're doing in the sustainable impact space. So Power Ledger have been one of Australia's very earliest blockchain businesses. They've got quite an important footprint in the sustainability space. They made a choice maybe 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, to transition from Ethereum actually to Solana. And they've only just finished that implementation. So they've switched off their own Ethereum-based blockchain and migrated onto Solana. I think in September they made the full transition announcement. Now, I spoke to them back in the day when they were part of the Australian blockchain space, and we didn't have all of the great Hedera Guardian open source tooling that we have now when they were making that decision to move over. So, 2 or 3 years ago, it made sense it never made sense to me, of course, but it made sense to Dr. Gemma Green and her team who run Power Ledger to use Solana. I did have a few conversations then, but I didn't have the great Guardian ecosystem that we have today. And of course, they've made commitments, they've made technology investments over the last 2 or 3 years. So once you do that, it's quite difficult to back out of, especially moving from an EVM-based technology like Ethereum onto an entirely new stack for Solana. So what would I say to her today if Gemma and I kind of met in the corridor? I would point her to all of the amazing announcements that came out from the Sustainable Impact Fund. Wes and his team were at COP29 in Baku last month. They tell me that they had over 300 meetings at COP29. There are 80,000 people descended on Baku. It's a crazy circus, the COP is. For the first time, we've been there for 3 years in a row, the first time the branding was known, Hedera Guardian was known, our ecosystem partners like Evercity, like Civic Ledger, like Envision, who are building the Guardian, building the applications around the Guardian, were known. And so these 300 meetings, which is a lot for 4 people to have, right, over the course of a week, were with countries, with ministers, with governments and central banks. They were with NGOs, the kind of World Bank and UNDP. These are really high-profile, high-powered decision makers who are talking about implementing the Hedera Guardian. Wes tells me that from the minister from Uganda wanted our team to be on their panel That was kind of a direct invitation by a minister of state. So we've kind of not, almost without direct marketing, because that hasn't been a dedicated use of resource around SIF. We've organically grown this over the last 2 or 3 years, and some of the applications that are coming together is just incredible. Evercity kind of driving carbon forwards and futures and bringing net new money into the ecosystem, which benefits HBAR holders as well, of course, because it's all built on Hedera, as well as addressing all these solutions around sustainable impact and carbon credits and biodiversity credits and water-based credits. In fact, I think Serge from Hashgraph, who was also there as part of the team, had a meeting with Malcolm Turnbull, who was a former Australian Prime Minister, about water and about Civic Ledger, who were one of our great builders here in Australia, using the Guardian. So there are many examples of how much impact that the Sustainable Impact Fund and the whole of the Guardian ecosystem is making. So that's what I would say in a not a 60-second conversation with the Power Ledger folks, but I honestly think they made the wrong decision. Maybe it's not all over yet, but I suspect there will be competition, as I know there is, across the Hedera ecosystem with Power Ledger. I mean, Dovu, for example, are kind of a direct competitor with Power Ledger. And the Dovu coin is far more valuable and far more useful than the Power coin that Power Ledger has, that issued many years ago. So, I think, competition is natural, and the winners will will be seen, over the next year or two. And Power Ledger, I suspect, has picked the wrong horse, but time will tell.
Well, we have plenty of our own use cases to be plenty excited about. Now, the next one comes from Kidju, who says, you guys promised some good stuff in Q4. Brandon, are you aware it's a bull market? Now, one of the things around these questions, sometimes we don't get to all of them every week, so we go back to our backlog and pull some of them forward. Now, the news, I would say, over the past few months has just been steady, normal, good Hedera news that we see coming out. There hasn't really been anything special here in Q4. It all seems special to me, but there's a constant flow of it. Nothing different from what we've seen, in the rest of the year as far as Hedera. But we have seen a pretty big market impact. I think that's just the normal cycles that move around crypto. But we were talking about things, around Hedera 2.0. I don't have any details around that, but obviously you got some of those details at the last governing council meeting. Is that what you were referring to when we were talking about it over the summer, or was there something else that you're looking forward to?
Oh, I wake up every day looking forward to some new amazing Hedera news. All I can say to the question is, are you not entertained? I mean, the last few days have just been the most amazing experience, and kind of just looking. I mean, I don't talk about markets, but the sentiment boost, the sense that we are getting up where we belong is palpable. We've got this whole DINO coin narrative, which sits really well, I think, with Hedera, with the utility, with the grown-ups in the room, differentiates us from the fun and the froth, which has a natural place in the Web3 space. But we can partake in that, of course, but we're also doing some real world stuff with the utility that the network brings. I would say we have had some really good Q4 announcements. I mean, the appointment of the Nairobi Securities Exchange to the governing council, spearheaded by the CEO of one of Africa's oldest stock exchanges, who told me in Miami that they are specifically looking to build at the heart of their securities exchange on Hedera using real world asset tokenization. That's a big deal. The stuff that's coming out from CLSQ and WiseKey and the satellites, with SpaceX relationship, it's a huge use case. All of our deep-in announcements, Neuron has been steadily making announcements, growing out their network in beta. We've got some amazing builders. The Foundry call just yesterday, I think, with Jim and Milan and Lehman talking about HashSphere. The name now is the brand name for special private networks on the Hedera stack is now out there, so we can talk about that as well. That's a pretty big deal because that's for enterprise moving towards the network. It's sometimes quite a big jump from what they're used to in Web 2 and to a full kind of Web3 public ledger network, and the transparency and trust that kind of brings. So HashSphere gives them a natural step through into that Web3 future. So we're perfectly placed. The Hyro announcement being the only layer one open sourcing the full stack under the Linux Foundation's new decentralized trust network. So these are big announcements, and I think because the news cycle is very fast in Web3 in the modern world, but especially in Web3, we forget what happened last week. We forget what happened yesterday with this much news, let alone what happened last week. So a whole quarter, I think we look back. It's December now, so we like our end of year roundups. Maybe we should definitely do that. Bring Zepsi back, have a bit of a Christmas year end roundup, because I think it's going to be a long one.
We'll do it for sure. Now, the next one comes from Human Edge Performance. He's asking about DREC, and I'm not sure if you have anything you want to throw in here, but I will point them back to that HBAR Foundry town hall that was just done, and it was that exact question was addressed by Lehman. It is one of his babies, so that's certainly a good place to go to. There's also the DRECalliance.org, so if you want to keep up with the latest there, you can keep up with it on there. Rob, do you have any thoughts on DREC before we move on?
Well, yeah, I can't better what Lehman has to say, except I think things like the DREC Alliance were prescient. Right, that being the grown-up in the room actually means being, collaborative in the space, and the DREC Alliance is an excellent example of that. And the way that Lehman kind of drove that and have attracted these other DINO networks into the room kind of demonstrates through action where others just talk. I mean, that's something that one can point to, something that's good for the industry, something that is demonstrable. And I think a part of this recent DINO narrative can be demonstrated through just pointing to the DREC Alliance and just build, all of these small things kind of just become part of the overall fabric that is, a Web3 space where Hedera is right at the heart of it, whether it's, initiating these things or, getting up there where we belong or, being part of a DINO meme. We're right at the center of it all, which is great.
Well covered. All right, so the next one comes from Professor HBAR, who says, I would like the community to receive an update on the unused HBAR provided for ATMA. Thanks. Now, the ATMA grant that was given, this is probably a better question for the HBAR Foundation, but you just got off the phone here with Wes. I didn't know if you had any updates, if you asked him about this specifically. I'm assuming that if the HBAR wasn't used, it'll be sent back to the HBAR Foundation, but did you get any information on that?
No, I didn't. I don't speak to Wes about contractual agreements and things that, he wouldn't talk to me about it anyway, even if I asked, because it's commercially sensitive. But yes, I mean any grants for any grant agreements that are unused, milestones not hit, are unallocated or not transferred. I suspect that the ATMA grant, the HBARs used for the ATMA grant, were largely transaction funds. So when they turned it off, the transactions didn't need to be paid for and therefore weren't allocated, which means that they can be reused for other grantees in the foundation. I think it's as simple as that.
There you go. All right. So the next one is from Crypto Commentary saying, a question for Rob. It seems like a decentralized digital ID solution would be ideal to solve issues around fraudulent votes being cast in general elections and for age verification to allow social media access in Australia. What does Rob think is the best way to get Hedera into discussions with government and social media titans on solutions around these issues? Should governing council members like IBM and Google be playing a role here in terms of offering solutions?
This is a question of identity, right? So digital identity, it's been long known, I think, that many very interesting Web3 and blockchain use cases are underpinned by solving for digital identity. And so the concepts of self-sovereign identity have been around, for a very long time, almost since blockchain emerged on the scene. I've built an identity platform, which was not a blockchain-based one for FPOS back in the day, but we plotted out the path from a federated model through to a more decentralized model, which is kind of a path that we're still on. Concepts of decentralized identifiers, or DIDs, and verifiable credentials or verifiable presentations, which are kind of combined VCs or verifiable credentials, have been with us for some time. And there are blockchains which are very specific to identity, like Sovereign. And then there are DLTs such as Hedera, where these things can be built reasonably simply and more very straightforwardly. In fact, we've got some identity experts within our ecosystem partners who have had long histories in building identity solutions, and we've got the DID method, which is part of our stack, capability that is there for everyone to use because it's open source. We've got partners like Nico who have been building verifiable credentials into our solutions, such as Guardian, we talked about earlier, was very heavily identity based. So lots of VCs and verifiable credentials, verifiable presentations as part of the chains of trust that are built on this kind of project data that feeds into Guardian. So lots and lots of use cases use identity. Specifically to the questioner, so US voting controls and the under 16 social media ban here in Australia, big political hot potatoes. And it's not about the technology. The technology can be and has been delivered to address these sorts of identity problem statements. The challenge is actually, as was alluded to, does it support a political positioning that not everyone would agree with? How does one maintain one's freedoms in a kind of environment where the political class control the citizens in a way that is not privacy preserving? So there's lots of really tough questions that need to be answered that don't come down to the technology. But I personally haven't had these conversations with the Australian government or those organizations that are seeking to deliver solutions to these bills. But I am certain that the likes of IBM, who are on the governing council, or some of the big four consulting firms with whom we do talk, are actively having those conversations right now. In fact, IBM have built digital identity projects on Hedera as part of their governing council role, and have shared those reference stacks with other governing council members to build upon as well. So that's kind of a long-winded answer to the question. I think it's a very difficult area to address. The other thing is that we're still in the identity space. There are different standards forming, so there's not a single self-sovereign identity standard that one could follow. W3C has one. There's one called a non-creds. So we're still a bit early to actually back one horse over the other, which always inhibits progress, because enterprise and governments don't want to back the wrong horse and allow the standards to continue to develop until such time as they can. But I don't think we're too far away from that happening.
All right, fair enough. Now, Rob, that's all the questions we have from the community here today. But I'm curious, we're entering a zone where things get a little bit crazy. Some people call it like a banana zone. I don't know where we are in this bull market, if we're closer to the beginning or the end. But you've been through at least one bull market in the Hedera ecosystem, and I don't know how many crypto bull markets in general. Yeah. But do you have any suggestions for the community out there of where to get their proper information, or just how to deal with what can be kind of a crazy time?
Oh, what a great question to drop on me. I think it's a crazy time. I won't advise, and never do advise on buying and selling, because one has to have a plan and stick to one's plan. That's always the best way. I think enjoy the crazy ride because we've been through a very long, deep crypto winter. And, you have to understand that, these cycles do come and go, and they can be relatively brief, so it could be 3 to 6 months. It could be shorter. It might be a bit longer, but it will end. And so it gets super, super crazy. If you go to conferences, crypto conferences or events, very, very different type of people start emerging to enjoy the what's going on. And they'll be quite different to the builders and more level-headed people, I think, that you probably sort of rubbed shoulders with over the last year or two, as the markets shook out all the crazies. The crazies will be back. So enjoy the crazies. You don't have to be a crazy. I think Hedera, we probably get the balance right. We've kind of erred towards being the grown-ups, but it's always fun to revisit one's youth and enjoy the fun and the ride. But remember, it's a party that isn't going to go on forever. So make sure that you come out the other end sane and with more than you went in with.
Enjoy the ride. I think that's a good one to leave on. If anybody has any additional questions for next week, go ahead and drop those down in the comments. That's pretty much all we have. Rob, we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Brandon. See you next week.
Now, there in Shark Bites, Rob did talk about transactional Internet of Things and DePIN, and just in time, we have Neuron coming out with a holiday update. They have 7 new use cases. 4 of them are DePIN, so decentralized physical infrastructure, and 3 of them are Edge AI, and all of them are looking for integrations and support from Neuron. The city in the UK, Milton Keynes, has deployed their sensors, so they're ready to go. And coming up this month, maybe a Christmas present, Jet Vision sensors are going to be going on sale. And coming up next year, 4D Sky is going to have additional integrations as well. One of the big things for Neuron is they're going to be using their token to incentivize the operation of all those sensors out there. And that token's probably going to be launched mid-next year from what I've heard so far. But coming up this month, Neuron is going to be launching their points program, so that's going to allow you to earn those tokens even before that token's launched. They're also going to be doing a review on the beta program that we've been talking about for a long time. That's also working with 4D Sky. And coming up in the year to come, Neuron's going to have 2 new trials. They're also going to be upgrading their Explorer and getting their website ready for scaling and mass adoption. And speaking of points programs, we also have Bonzo that's going through their points program right now. Their token hasn't launched either, but they're allowing you to earn points right now by putting your tokens on platform. So you gain some points by doing that. You're going to gain even more points when you actually borrow those assets. And hopefully, from what I've heard, that's going to be taking place next week. Now, from the beginning of this points program, they've allowed you to increase your points allocation by using their NFTs. Those include the Desert, Ocean, Space, and Singularity NFT. I do have one of those Singularities. They did launch some additional NFTs just a few hours ago. They're called the Cybernetic NFTs, and they sold out in under a minute, so I didn't get any, but you can still pick these up over on Centex. Now, of course, we talk about Karate Combat on a regular basis, but we haven't talked about their Up platform, which is going to allow Up-only gaming to go to other sports leagues and competitions out there. And they just announced another team that's going to be participating in that. That's Top Flight Football. I don't know how expansive this list of Up-only gaming platforms is going to be by the time we're all said and done, but I will say that the last I heard, they were already over 30 teams that are going to be participating on the Up platform. And the last thing before we get into prices and network analysis that I wanted to touch on is something that's coming out of the HBAR Foundation. The post said, we're excited to share our DAO proposal on Stargate Finance to connect Hedera DeFi with its fully composable asset bridge and launch a liquidity pool for Circle USDC on Hedera. Now, I haven't wrapped my head fully around this quite yet, but I will say that USDC liquidity, both for the DeFi ecosystem and beyond, is going to be critical. So I'm going to try to get with the people over at the HBAR Foundation that are working on this project to get some more information as soon as we can. And with that, let's go ahead and take a look at some network analysis. As I hop in here on Hashpoint, we're processing a couple dozen transactions per second, though generally when I've looked, we've been a little lower. Still, we've seen a bit of an uptrend in network activity over the past month, particularly around DeFi, so those are higher value smart contract calls. The network created 80,000 accounts this week, adding to the over 7 million accounts created in total. We also had over 1 million NFT transfers and 32,000 fungible token transfers in the past 7 days. Moving over to the HBAR and crypto markets, Bitcoin is up 5% on the week and 2.8% on the day to $101,800. HBAR is up nearly a perfect 100% on the week and 15% on the day to over 32 cents. 27 to 28 cents was an important level back in the last bull run, and it looks to have set up as an area of support. We just experienced a textbook bull flag breakout, which is pretty bullish, and I would expect the next target to be at about 40 cents. Time will tell if it gets tested this weekend. As a reminder, weekends are generally times of price dips in crypto bear markets and spikes in bull markets. I am going to do an HBAR bull market targets and timeline video in a couple weeks, so stay tuned for that. So one of the rumors that I've seen floating around out there is that Samsung might be joining the Hedera Governing Council, and it stemmed from an interview that Nilmini Rubin had done with a reporter, and she had mentioned Samsung along several of the other Governing Council members. I actually think that was a mistake. I think she just misspoke and said Samsung instead of LG. Not a huge mistake, but of course, in our space, people can get really excited about that kind of stuff. Now, if you are new to the Hedera ecosystem, you've seen me go off on these little rabbit holes over and over again, and I didn't explain exactly what a lot of these things are. So if you didn't know what Neuron was, or you don't know what Bonzo is, go ahead and go on my channel and search for some of the built on Hedera videos that I've put out. I think I have like 4 Neuron videos. I certainly have a Bonzo video on there as well. So if you're not sure of any of the teams or the projects that I mentioned, just go ahead and search on my channel, and I'm sure you're going to find everything you need. So next week coming up, I have a really busy week. As you might have seen, I was on All In Crypto this past week. I'm going to be on Mike Maloney next week. People are just getting more excited about Hedera and the HBAR, so it's not surprising that I'm getting calls to go on other people's podcasts. I'm also going to be getting Richard Bear on to talk about some of the technical changes that are coming up, and I'd like to get some of the team members from MemeJob.Fun to swing on as well to talk about exactly what they're trying to launch there, maybe some of the meme coin creators that are planning on launching on there, and maybe I'll grab Zep as well because I know he's excited about it too. Of course, we have Rob Allen coming on next week, so if you have any questions on the HBAR economy or the Hedera ecosystem, drop those down in the comments below. Certainly check out that auction that we covered a little bit earlier. That's pretty much all we have. We'll see you next week.